Hello everybody, this is Tony Visco. I'm your host for Painting for Pleasure. Welcome, and we're going to end up doing a sand dune today, but we're really going to concentrate on the scrub pine trees. The sand dunes basically are going to be a backdrop on Cape stuff. I just actually pulled this file off of this image off of Google's images, and it's just basically all we're doing is we're doing this basically tree here with some scrub, and we'll work that out. So that's the image that I'm going to work from. We just put it over here, and we're going to do this loose. So as I look at it, everything is pretty light except for the darkness of the trees. And so we'll have a predominantly light to mid-value painting with some dark trees. And what I'm going to do is take my water here and just wet. We're going to do this a step at a time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wet down the sky into the dune area. This is all dry right now, and I'm going to do a cerulean sky. This is going to be light cerulean blue. Okay, and we're going to end up moving that down to a little bit more cobalt blue as we come down to the bottom. So we got a little bit of a transition going. And just to notice the difference, I'm just going to leave all of this stuff in the center area. I'm going to be covering a lot of this stuff with the tree itself, but I just want to make sure that we have some nice sky area. I'll keep this nice and light back here. Now, this was wet, and I'm putting wet into wet. So my pigment was fairly wet when I put this in here, and the changeover as I hit this is going to be a little bit darker as I come down to the bottom. Alright, and all of the tree stuff up here that I put in is going to be a little bit darker. So what I'm doing is I'm starting with the same cerulean blue, cobalt blue rather, same cobalt blue up here, adding a little bit of my burnt sienna to that to start getting gonna let that drop down a bit. That is to say, I'm going to allow I'm actually painting this at a bit of an angle, so my centrifugal force, my gravity feed, is going to start to pull this down a bit, so it tends to be a little bit more flowy, I guess, if that's a word, or drippy. When we do this, and I want to come in here and I want to make some of this area, I'm going to go right off the top of the page. Now these are scrub pine, so essentially what we're going to do is we're going to see this sort of needle effect that we're going to end up with. We want to make sure that we get some of that in there, so we're going to end up doing that. We want to make sure that we get this feeling, the major feel of scrub pine. What I'm doing is I'm mixing up a little bit of burnt sienna with my cerulean blue, a little bit of burnt sienna with my cerulean blue, and adding a touch of Nuke Gamboge to it. So I've got some blue here. But it's obviously going to turn a bit green, and darker in spots. So we may end up, let's see if I can create that nice effect there. And as we come out here, we're going to do the same thing because we got that nice feeling. We'll end up enhancing that a bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually take a little bit of smaller, rounder brush here. See if I can create that a little bit more. By taking my brush, yeah, I'll give you an example. Let's get this. We want a little bit more opaqueness to this thing here right now, so, and I'm going to turn it. I'm going to turn it a little bit darker brown because I want to do a little bit of under painting in the shadowed areas under here. So now this is a little bit thicker. This is more creamy, milky creamy over here. So we're just gonna put it in. We want to get it again. What I'm trying to do is to get this more on the green brown side. All right. So what we're seeing here, if I really am looking at this thing, I got some nice darks under here. A little bit of dark there. Some nice feeling of my trees there. Now this is basically what happens here is that I'm putting, this is really dark, this is dry down here, but we're going to create a little bit of a darker area as this dries, getting thicker, getting a little bit thicker, using burnt sienna and a little bit of French ultramarine blue and my cerulean blue. And here, and it's all, as you can see, we're just, it's laying the brush down flat and making these sort of curved curved shapes, I guess, to it. Okay. Now, I want to get a little bit more, I'll get this a little bit more orangey red in here. So I'm basically taking my burnt sienna. Oh, I want to create this little. It's a little bit too wet. Might work, but it's a little bit too wet. Let's see what happens up here. Keep it on the light side, watery, light watery, but don't. That's a little bit too much. I put a little bit too much stuff in here. All right. It's wet, so it's going to take advantage of the. It might make some blossoms, which is fine for this in this case, because what we want to do is to create that tree, so it has a general feeling of scrub, rough scrub pine. It's a bit of the. It's a bit in the. I guess it's. I would say if they're turning a bit, it would be a bit in the fallish time of year. All right, so I'm taking this. You notice what I'm doing is I'm taking my brush, a little bit of the light stuff that I'm working with here, and I'm just adding a needle-like feel. See that? And this is normally what I would do is I would not use somebody else's work when I'm doing this. I think it doesn't do us a bit of good to, well, it's nice to work off of your own stuff if you can do that. I mean I understand a lot of us can't, and that's perfectly okay. And in this case, because it's a teaching lesson, I'm not really too overly concerned with this, because it's probably not going to go into a show or anything like that. But it's nice to work off your own, your own images and photographs if you can possibly help it. So I'm not going to do too much in the sky, so that's why I'm just playing around with this stuff here. And so what we're going to do is we're going to start to put in a little bit more of our heavier, my trunk area here. Trunk's going to be a little bit of yellow ochre. Add a touch of burnt sienna, yellow ochre, and that's all going to be dark in there anyway. So before actually I do the trunk, let me try else. I want to do something else here. I've got some dune grass that I want to put in here, and I want to create this. Let's make this a bit on the, I don't want this dry. So let me wet this area. Alright, this is all dune grass, and the shadow, it's going to come down here. Now this is, again, it's fairly dry, but what I'm really trying to do is to come over here and wet this area. There's going to be a combination of wet and dry. And I'm going to just clear up, I'm going to get some clear water here, just a second. Clearer water, I suppose. Cleaner water. And soften this up, because what I'm really looking for is some subtlety in terms of doing these changes over here. And with clear water I can create that. Some subtle changes down here to where I want to put some of the heavier, darker trees, brush, not trees so much, because we only deal with those trees up there, but we have some sand dunes, and like a lot of sand dunes, what happens in sand dunes, we've got some soft changes in grass, dune grass that happens. Okay, so now that that's sort of wet, what I'm doing is I'm going to take some of my rust color, because the grass, if we're dealing with a fall dune and all of this stuff is changing, then my grass is going to be a little bit more rusty in its overall feel, and the shadows are going to be a little bit deeper. That means then I'm going to be able to come in here and create some darker areas. Using basically my burnt sienna and a little bit of red and a little bit of my cadmium orange or cadmium yellow, either one. Just going to create some of this stuff. We got some cool stuff going on over here. That will end up being a clump of brush. And the same thing over here. We're going to end up balancing that off a bit. That's going to be pretty dark. I mean, I'm going to come in here and I'll just give you an example right now. I'm just going to put this in. No, it's just clumpy right now, but it'll work out. Because what I want to do is I'm going to try to use the white of the paper for my actual dune. So this is what I'm doing here is my dark areas are my combination of French ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. As I come in here into the dry area, because the reason I'm going from the wet to dry, so you can create these little sort of general feeling of paint with light through it. Oh, uh-oh, I have to come up more now. Okay. And now, while I'm doing this, and that's wet, I want to just sort of take some light. I want to lighten up one side. So let me get another brush here. My old dagger brush, and add a little bit of water. On the trunk. What I'm doing is I'm just coming in here. We got some trunks that are in there. So let's just lighten this up a bit before I put my darks in there. All right. We'll lighten that up. I'm taking my water. Okay, so let's go back now. This stuff is, and we're going to end up with bringing a lot of this stuff. See, I'll do it right now. We're just going to bring some of this stuff down here so that we can create some of the grass that's in here. But we'll take care of that in a minute. I want to get a little bit of burnt sienna. Add my red to it. So what's going to end up happening is we're going to end up, let's see if this is, I'll put this in the center right now. It's still a little bit on the wet side. Not quite what I want it to be. So what I'm doing is I'm just actually going down the center of that. All right, not quite. We gotta let it dry a bit. We'll let that dry up a bit, because it's not what I want. But I can put some of the stuff in here. So let's take in add a little bit of cerulean blue here with my burnt sienna. And we can start to look at maybe taking and putting in some of my tree trunk. And remember, this is all scrub pine. Okay, so we're just putting in some general dark, so I'm going to end up lifting some light out of this pretty soon. Some real big stuff over here. And a big fat. Actually, this is huge. It's a big stump, big tree stump over here. Not stump, but trunk. Big at the bottom. Against these, we're actually gonna make this one here pretty big too. All right, so we have gonna sort of make this more brighter, I guess, lighter, orangey looking. Add a little bit more red to it. Down in this area here. I'm gonna lighten this up here. I'm gonna darken it around the other side. So we got a nice dark area over here. We're gonna just make that darker there. All right, cool. Scrub pine, ladies and gentlemen, or ladies as it were, because we don't have any of you guys. Dick's no longer with us. He'll be back, I suspect. So we want some real, we're going to start putting some real darks in here. Now that this is sort of dried out, we can create that pine look with some drier, so we can create those needle-like. Let's get some of that new gamboge in here, green, and we're going to just new gamboge and burnt, well, maybe not burnt sienna this time, but maybe a little bit of cerulean blue. See what I'm talking about? It's just it's darker. Add a little bit of maybe make it a little bit darker by adding some French ultramarine blue here. We don't need, what we do need though is some heavy dark right in this area here. Okay, that's plenty for that. Let's go back here. Okay, create that tree trunk a little more, and we have this dark area coming off this one. Some real darks up in here, in here, and we're going to end up bringing some real darks down in this area here as well. Alright, let's put a little bit more emphasis on the shadow on that side of the tree, and as we come down here we're going to end up with shadow there. Shadow there. Some shadow there. This is interesting. Okay. Okay, so we have a lot of scrub pine with those heavy trees. Scrub pine with all the dark stuff there. I might have made this all a little bit too dark, but I don't know. It looks pretty good to me right now. So let's just go on. Let's put in some of that rough stuff that's up here. So we have some dark grass that's up in this area here. And that grass is green. And it's scrub-like. So we'll start to do something like that. We got some of this stuff is going to be, it's going to, and these are dunes, so we're going to make them at least give you the appearance of dunes back in those areas, and again. Now I'm doing this is just dry brush here. Very light. Okay. Yeah. Very light, right? This is not dry brush. That was dry brush up there. This is a wet brush into a little bit of a wet and dry area. Alright, so let's go back over to here and just continue to do some dry brush or drier twig-like. What I'm probably going to do is get my rigger brush and see what we can do to get this a little bit more characteristic. This is very thin, very light. We're mixing up a little bit of the darkest darks and some of the lighter lights. There's all kinds of stuff going on in here. Okay, so that's what I'm doing. Is giving myself an ability to get some of this, all of this stuff in the dune area where the, there's always, as you go along, there's all of this cool stuff that comes out of the dunes, grows everywhere. It's all scrub. And I guess basically the idea here is just enough to make the statement. You don't want to necessarily overdo it, which we can all do, don't we? Know that. Now I have a shadow, so I'm gonna do a shadow back here. See if I can get to do my shadow in a little bit more of a bluish area, because this is if I can soften that out a bit. It's actually the shadow of the tree, but all right. Looks pretty good so far. Let's get some of this interesting stuff that goes on down here. All this crappy all these sticks that stick in the ground. So now let me do this too, because we've got this branch that comes out here. So I want to get this thing more of a red-brown. So we have this sort of branch that's coming off this tree here. Okay. And again, scrub pine. Doesn't make any difference what color, by the way. What does make a difference is value. And so that's the most important thing. And I'm going to create some more let me just get some of this stuff in here and just see if I can put a little bit in here and there. Orange, a little bit of yellow ochre. So just creating a little bit more interest in some of these trees, because they do have a lot of branches. Twigs that go off this stuff. And I don't want them all the same color. Or the same value, actually. I want some of them lighter, darker. Right. I think we're close. Let's get some of this stuff in here. Now we'll just do, basically this is all dry. Again, this is the same kind of tinder or brush scrub that comes out of the ground most cases everywhere. And we're here a little little bushes and changing this up a bit. Now what I'm doing is I'm just taking some Naples yellow, because it's a little bit more opaque like, to break up this spot a little bit. And that Naples yellow is kind of a cool, nice color. Oh, and a little bit of my yellow ochre. So let's get some darks in here. Okay. I lost that real dark that was up here, didn't I? All this cool stuff that was super dark. Okay, where is all this a little darker there. I think I'm going to have to take a little bit of light out of that area there. Oh, this is just dry brushing here. Let me just go over here and just create some a little bit of stuff here and there, a few shadows. Okay, white of the paper, left that alone. I'm going to take a little bit of shadow. What I'm doing is I'm mixing up a little bit of shadow color. And I'm going to run it right in here. And I'm going to run it right in here. And I'm going to run it right in here. Alright. Some of that stuff back up in here. I think that's going to be my painting. So, thank you for being with me today. I'm your host, Tony Visco. This is Scrub Pine on the Dunes. And looks like it should work out okay. Have a nice day. Enjoy your summer months. And that's it. Take care. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.